Okay. So, hello everybody. Welcome to our first meeting of Bright Garden Voices. You can see the screen, I think. Well, sorry. Bright Garden Voices, as you all might have already read, is a project that intends to provide a platform for constructive dialogue between Armenians and Azerbaijanis. We will be hosting Zoom meetings where guests from both sides will share their experiences and ideas concerning all matters relating to Azerbaijani and Armenian conflicts and issues. Each meeting will also host an audience, which will be able to propose questions or comments to the moderators to be voiced. The meetings will be recorded and made available online. This project is the initiative of three enthusiasts for peace and dialogue who want to build bridges between Armenians and Azerbaijanis. We are neither affiliated with nor funded by any organization for this undertaking. So first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Diego Arduan. I'm from Argentina, Buenos Aires. Being from Buenos Aires, I've always been exposed to the big Armenian community that we have here in Buenos Aires. So that somehow started some kind of interest for me on Armenian issues. And I started to study them during my studies in geography in Buenos Aires. However, since it's the diaspora Armenia, I was always more focused on, like Turkey and Armenia, and I had been involved in some issues, some activism for reconciliation and things like this, and between Turkey and Armenia. And then during this latest conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan, I realized that this kind of undertakings could also be done between Armenia and Azerbaijan. So that's kind of a little bit what started this idea. And I was lucky to have two great people join in this project. So I would like to invite them to introduce themselves a little bit. Aidan, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, well, first of all, warm welcome, everyone. Really happy to see so many people. My name is Aidan. I am 28 years old. I was born in Baku, Azerbaijan. I grew up there. And I moved to the Netherlands to study. This is also where I currently work. I work in the field of IT and data. I'm not affiliated with any organization, and I'm not here to represent Azerbaijan in any official way. I'm just here as myself, as an individual, and any opinions I might express are my own. Being Azerbaijani, even though I'm not from Karabakh myself, I've grown up with a lot of pain and trauma and a feeling of injustice that I think a lot of people will recognize. For me, as for most Azerbaijani people, it is something very personal. So during this past war, when it broke out, I plunged into the depth of it in the social media. And being able to witness all these things, even from far away, felt quite traumatizing, especially having parts of my family still living in the areas in Azerbaijan that were heavily bombed during the war was quite difficult. But also I realized during this war that being on social media and engaging with people from different countries, including people from Armenia, that I'm from this generation born in the 90s that hasn't really seen or interacted so much with the face of the enemy, so to say. So during this conflict, I realized that there is quite a few people that are willing to sit down and discuss with you and talk about the issues that we have without necessarily having to agree, and that's actually fine. So this really inspired me to get involved with Diego and Arnold for this undertaking, and to facilitate discussions between people that are Armenian or Azerbaijani or somehow related to this conflict, to sit down and talk to each other about these issues. That was on me, and I'll pass the word to Arnold.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first meeting. I am Arnold. I am joining from the United States, where I have spent most of the past 2 decades. I'm Armenian. I'm a PhD candidate in history, and I also TA and teach courses. My research mainly concerns the late antique Iranian world and the Caucasus, but my studies also deal with the relationships between narrative, violence, and group identity. How did I end up here? Well, after the horrible war and all the toxic rhetoric that accompanied it on various platforms, I wanted to facilitate more constructive dialogue among Armenians and Azerbaijanis. I was not alone, and that is how I met Diego and Aidan. I want to emphasize that I am only a moderator in this program. If I express an opinion, I am representing myself only, and not any nation or any group. The wounds and losses of the recent war are still very fresh, especially for Armenians, where there were a lot of losses. On top of that, there is the brutal POW crisis. It is not despite all of these things, but in my opinion, because of this difficult post-war situation, that ordinary people from both sides deserve to have their voices heard. That said, let us move on to the format. Diego, can you change the slide? Oh, there it is. My bad. So the format. In each meeting, we will usually host 2 guests from each side or individuals somehow involved with matters relating to Armenia and Azerbaijan. Each meeting will cover a different topic where our guests will answer questions and engage in dialogue. The audience can write questions for the hosts to ask the guests. And if the audience will be allowed to ask questions themselves as long as they have their cameras and microphones turned on. And lastly, the meetings will be recorded and made available online. Let's go to Aidan for the house rules.
Yes. So for this format of having dialogue between people of, let's say, on both sides, we realized that there is a need to set up some basic house rules that we can all refer to and follow. And I'll just walk you through them quickly, but they're also on your screens right now. So first and foremost, we are not going to use any insults, slurs, or disrespectful language. That's going to be an absolute no-go. During the meetings, you are able to ask questions to the moderators, and then we can give the word to you, but we don't condone provocative or aggressive questions. Another important point to remember is that agreeing to disagree is okay, and sometimes it's key. And denialism is not tolerated, and it will not be discussed. I think that speaks for itself. Let's try to empathize with each other before we, or rather than making any accusations. And let's not use discriminatory or generalizing statements about any ethnicity. So in the way you phrase your conversations, please try to make sure that you don't generalize to the entire country or nation. And finally, we are here just as individuals to speak to each other. And everyone is responsible for themselves. They're representing themselves, not their governments, not their nations. So I think it's Diego next.
Yes. So we're gonna go briefly through the agenda. We just introduced the project, introduced the moderators, Aidan and Arnold. And now we're gonna introduce our guest, today's meeting's theme. And after around half an hour discussion with our guest, we're gonna go to the questions from the audience, which will be sent to me, and I will choose them based on how much time we have left and that they comply with the rules and that they are related to the subject. And also you can state in the questions if you are willing to ask yourself with camera and mic, so we know already we're going to prioritize those questions as well. And after those around, we expect 10 to 15 minutes of, so to say, semi-open discussion. We will have some closing words, and that will be it. We expect this meeting to take in total around between 1 hour or 1.5. I think that's enough for today's meeting, right? So as you might have seen on our flyer, done by Aidan, thank you very much. Today's meeting theme is just an introduction to dialogue. It's more abstract, so to say. We want this first meeting to set the tone for the following meetings that we intend to do. We plan to continue this. This is not a one-time thing. And the idea behind this meeting is that since the beginning of the war, we have, most of the people who have been following the conflict have seen how many webinars and discussions have been held with scholars from Azerbaijan, from Armenia, expressing their opinions. And we thought, why it always has to be intellectuals? Why cannot just like regular citizens also talk to each other? And also kind of engage a little bit more than those webinars where people were most just expose their opinion at some point only and not really talk to each other. So we thought this is just something like that, except for normal citizens, so to say. And for this reason, we invited our two guests. We're going to introduce them now. But with the idea behind that, as long as we keep in mind that we can be respectful with each other, we should be able to talk to each other. Okay, so I think now we will introduce the guest.
Yes, so first off, let me introduce Hrayr. Hrayr is our guest. He's originally from Yerevan. He's 33 years old. He studied economics and worked as a journalist on economic topics. And currently he's living in the Netherlands for the past several years, where he's also following a research master's in philosophy. I hope I did you justice. We can move on to Ümid.
Diego, do you want to keep the screen shared?
No, I will stop after we.
Okay, great. So our next guest is Ümid, and Ümid is joining us from Baku. He has a degree in American Studies, and he is currently an English teacher. Thank you, Ümid, for joining us.
Thank you for inviting.
Of course, and I will just start off the questions with Ümid himself. So let's start with you. How has the latest war affected you personally and the people around you?
Well, of course, I have to say that it didn't affect me positively. I mean, of course, it had a very negative effect on me. I mean, first of all, all day I was just checking Twitter to see what's going on. I mean, what news is coming, losses and shellings of the cities and so on. I mean, all this stuff, of course, was very traumatic. But at the same time, I have to say that after this war, I started to be more interested in the conflict. I mean, before the wars, to be honest, I wasn't so much interested because I was thinking that, okay, it's just a frozen conflict. Probably I will never see the war again. And so I didn't so much care about it. But then I started to realize that after this war, as a result of this war, actually, these two societies will have to, interact more. I mean, more than before. That's why I started to be more interested in interacting with the people from the other side. So that can be the only positive result of the war for me personally. But apart from that, as I can say, it was of course a very tough time for me, and psychologically I was affected so much. And I think that it's the same for everyone in the areas living in this conflict.
Thank you for that insight, Ümid. And how about you, Hrayr? How did this latest war affect you, the people around you, and your community? You're muted, Hrayr.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. It also affected me personally a lot. I couldn't concentrate on doing anything, work or study or something else, and I was checking news all the day. And sometimes even it was very difficult to sleep. And some of my relatives participated in war, and 2 of them also were injured. And yeah, it was a very traumatic experience, especially I think also because, as Ümid says, I didn't expect the war. I thought that at the end, some solution, peaceful solution will be found, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. And yeah, even after the war, it took me almost, I think, 2 months to recover and going back to my work and study and other stuff.
Thank you. Thank you for your insight. Very interesting. Aidan will ask the next question.
Yes. So the question I have is same for both of you, but let's start with Ümid. What kind of interactions have you had with people from the other sides? So it could be, before, during, or after the war.
Okay. Like I said, I mean, before the war, I wasn't interested in the conflict almost at all. So I didn't have so much interest in interacting with people from Armenia. I mean, for me, they were just, some foreigner people. I mean, foreigners. So it wasn't anything different for me. But there was only one. I had only one follower from Armenia, and I also followed him. And the interesting thing is that I also met him because of my, sarcastic tweets. So that Diego knows his sarcastic tweet things about me. So, but after that, during the war, I started to be interacting with some people. I can also share their names. For example, Ruben, also. There were some other people who I started to follow because I saw that they are, writing something reasonable and also respectful. So I can learn something about Armenian perspective on the conflict. And also I started some people from Azerbaijan who were also writing about the conflict. Before that, I didn't follow such people. I mean, for me, it was nothing. It wasn't something interesting, but then during the war, I started to follow people from both sides, actually, who are writing about such things. And I also have to say that after the war, like in November, I sometimes had, kind of arguments with people from the other side about things that we didn't agree. But then I started seeing that actually, it's not a good starting point because we just got to know each other. So what's the point of starting with this controversial issues? Rather than talking about controversial issues, we first have to settle what are the things that we agree on. So I changed my perspective about this and started to follow also people who had different opinions about this topic. And I started to see that it's actually good for me because before that I only followed the Armenians whom I agreed. But then I started to follow the Armenians also who I don't agree at all. So that's the way the war changed my, let's say, perspective about this conflict.
And did your interactions were they changing in terms of the light, like a positive or more negative?
Yes, I can say that it changed into into more positive, let's say, tones. So we started to see that actually, even though we don't agree about some things, we still can respectfully talk to each other. You know, before that, for example, once I remember with one guy, I had a bit tough argument. I mean, I actually thought that he was just a troll and bot and writing some hateful stuff. That's why I also started talking like him. So then I apologized and I said it wasn't necessary. Actually, I didn't have to do that. So, and now when I see someone from, for example, from the other side who writes something, for example, unacceptable for me, I don't actually so much care about it. I mainly start to try to see, you know, something positive also from the other side, to see, you know, what kind of constructive dialogue we can have. Okay.
What's your perspective on that, Hrayr? What kind of interactions did you have with Azerbaijan?
During and after the war, I didn't have any interactions. So this is the first interaction after the war. But I had some interactions between 2010 and 2015. And last time when I had some chat was 2018 during the Armenian Revolution. One of my classmates with whom I studied in Georgian Georgian Institute of Public Affairs in Chipa, he texted me. He were saying that, yeah, that we should be careful and this type of stuff. And but most of my interactions again were from 2010 to 2015 in the format of mostly seminars organized for journalists or for political activists, young political activists. And it was very diverse. My experience with them was very diverse. Most of the time, they were very like these. Our interactions were very cold, and I can even say that there weren't any interaction. In some cases, it went very well, and in some cases, it went very bad. I can tell what case was very bad and what case was very good. If I don't know if it's interesting, but yeah, my overall opinion was that it's very diverse. People are very different, and another opinion also was that actually, in the sense of values and everyday life concepts and understanding and worldview, we are too similar to each other. Yeah, that's the main thing which I got from these interactions.
So what do you think made the ones that were positive and the ones that were negative, sort of negative? What was the difference there?
I think it's worldview of the people, especially how much they are nationalistic. If they are too much nationalistic, then it doesn't go well. If they try to see the people not only through the national identity point of view, but through other lenses, like as an individual, in that case, it can go quite well.
Right. Thanks for sharing your experiences. If you don't have anything else to comment on this topic, I think we can move to the next question.
All right, great. So let's go back to Ümid. And I'm going to ask you do you think there is something about your personal background or your experiences that encourage you to speak to the other side or those who don't agree with you with respect?
Well, like Hrayr said, I think it's mostly depends on your political ideology. For example, in my case, as I'm a libertarian, I'm individualistic person. I always see people as an individual. I don't see from the lenses of a national identity. So when I talk to an Armenian or, for example, Georgian or Turkish person, I don't see them as, let's say, Turkish or Armenian. I just see them as an individual, and I see if I agree with this person or not. And I try at least, it's, of course, no matter how individualistic one person is, of course, sometimes we have some, let's say, biases or prejudices about many people. So, but as a rational person, I always try to remove these barriers from my mind and try to see people as an individual, and that's how I can, let's say, talk to them. I mean, I don't, when they say something, I don't see any, let's say, bad intentions behind this, let's say, tweet. I think this is one of the problematic issues that, let's say, prevents us from making or having dialogue. I mean, when, for example, I write something, let's say, if an Armenian is a nationalist, he or she will see this, let's say, in a totally different color, and Azerbaijani will see it in a totally different way. So, but I think that this has to be changed, and this is how I try to have a dialogue. I mean, as I said, yeah, mostly my political ideology helps me to do this.
Yeah, and it really has shown sort of through my interactions with you and the way sort of you're criticizing sort of a whole array of things and not just one side or the other. But thank you. And Hrayr, how about yourself? Anything do you think about your personal background, about your experiences that sort of helps you interact with the other side with respect?
Yeah, the same as Ümid. I think I'm more individualistic compared to like maybe average Armenian, and especially I think, more individualistic also when I lived in Armenia, but especially when I moved to the Netherlands, I see huge difference in the sense of cultural difference. Here, I mean, Netherlands is also affected by United States a lot culturally. Your experience, your individuality is very important. I may even say your ego is very important, and you see the world like the state and the homeland and all other stuff, this type of stuff, are to serve you, not the vice versa, which is, I think, a dominant idea in Armenia. I mean, you should serve to your homeland. This is the dominant idea of the, let's say, maybe even not dominant, but quite widespread idea in Armenia. This is the nationalism. So that's the thing, again, individualism. I think that helps me to interact easily with others.
But just to follow up on that with both of you, do you think it's only sort of individuals who sort of are very individualistic, or maybe those who also think in collective terms that are also sort of?
You can think, yeah, you're right, you can think also in collective terms, but if that collective terms are not in the framework of national identity or in the framework of nationalistic ideologies, you can be very like collective way thinking about everything, collectivist, but if that's collectivism is, let's say, left wing and doesn't have to do anything with nationalism, or has a little bit to do with nationalism, that's also the way. Because when I say nationalism and nationalistic story, I mean that like how you see yourself and make sense of your life. You see yourself as a proud son of I don't know, 5,000-year-old nation, which has a divine some things, and it had a glory in the past, and then now you have to serve to get the glory, or this type of stuff. I'm saying this the extreme version. Of course, not many people follow this story or make sense of their lives based on this story, but some people do this. And if you see the world in the sense of, let's say, a liberal philosophy, and I mean liberal in very wider sense, like classical liberalism, left liberalism, or high liberalism, in general, when you make sense of your lives, when you focus on the individuals and their interactions, in that case, yeah, that's I think very easy in that case to have a constructive dialogue.
Thank you. I mean, that's
totally agree with them.
Who was that?
Me. I was saying that I would totally agree with them.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say there is, of course, also a wide array of nationalist voices, which, speaking in collective terms, would also want sort of dialogue, and it doesn't necessarily contradict with a collective sort of identity. Some people might push a sort of dialogue in that direction also, but very interesting insights. Aydan, let's go to you for the next question.
Yes. So it's interesting to hear from your personal experiences as you've sort of discussed, but now we can see that the two of you are also quite open to dialogue as opposed to, let's say, many other people. So what do you think is the biggest obstacles to constructive dialogue between just regular people, one, from Armenia, one from Azerbaijan? Because the level of discourse we see online is very low, let's put it this way.
Is the question for me now?
Yeah, you can start.
Okay. Okay, I can start. Well, I think especially on online discourse, the biggest obstacle right now is the lack of empathy. I mean, people not even try to understand the other side. I mean, they only think that they should prove something to the other side. I mean, they are already predisposed with the idea of, trying to tell the truth of his own side or her own side, and they don't listen to understand. They just listen to to debunk the arguments of the other side. I mean, this is, I think, the biggest obstacle right now. I mean, the other thing is, this whataboutism. Let's say an Armenian, for example, is writing something about the traumas and problems of Armenians are suffering now, and one Azeri guy, for example, comes and says, "What about our, for example, tragedy? Why aren't you talking about that?" I mean, of course, if no one is saying that, for example, your tragedy was better, our tragedy was worse. I mean, if I'm talking about my tragedy, it doesn't mean that I am, in some sense, trivializing yours. So we should understand this. This is the other obstacle. And I think the reason why people have this lack of empathy is that we have been isolated for almost 30 years. I mean, I see that especially on online discourses, people from both sides don't see each other as real human beings. They see each other as, some bots tweeting and, arguing, and they don't see them as real people in flesh and bone. I saw, actually, I gotta tell you something. Once I saw a tweet from the Azeri side. I mean, the guy was saying that, I don't really understand this, if these Armenians are real people. I mean, are they going to the bathroom? Are they doing some real normal people stuff? And the funny thing is, after let's say 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I saw exactly the same comment written by an Armenian. He was like, "Are you guys Azeris normal people? Are you going to the bathroom?" and so on. So this is something that must be solved. I think it can be only solved by dialogue. I mean, we have to see each other and, okay, we are a real person, and although we are not agreeing with each other, at least we have to understand them. They're human, real human beings. We are here. I mean, this is something very important. For example, I think if we look back to 90s, we can see that even after that kind of traumatic war, people from both sides at least were having some interaction with each other in Russia, in some other countries, and also leaders of Azerbaijan and Armenia could talk to each other very easily. It was, something very normal back then, because still people's memories of each other were fresh. I mean, they had seen each other during the Soviet times, and they had friendships. But our generation, unfortunately, didn't have this experience. For us, I'm talking about from the Azeri side. For us, an Armenian was a person with beard and with ugly face from the war films about Karabakh, and it was really, let's say, intimidating subject for us. So, but we have to, let's say, overcome this issue. I think this is the biggest problem: lack of empathy because of the isolation, and also this, whataboutism.
Thanks, Ümid. What would you say, Hrayr, are the biggest obstacles for regular people?
Yeah, I agree with Ümid. I think that many people think that they should prove something to the other side, and there is really lack of empathy. But I would add something else. I think what I noticed is that there is like this in nationalistic attitudes, and people who are very nationalistic, they think that they are standing in higher ground morally to judge those who are more individualistic, for example, me, and say, yeah, you are not the real patriot, or you are not the real guy, you are too egoistic. And for many people, this is frightening. Many Armenians may feel like, okay, I'm not gonna do this. I don't want to interact with other side because, yeah, what others will think in my country, they will blame me for this and that. And of course, in Armenian internet, there is a lot of insult, slur also. Even current government is blamed for like they lost the war deliberately or something like this. I mean, these attitudes which nationalists have, and that they feel that they are standing in high moral ground, I think that's one of the biggest obstacles for having a constructive dialogue. And yeah, again, I'm saying the same idea over and over again, that this nationalism, I think, should be eliminated, or at least softened in our countries, and then we will have a constructive dialogue and solve the problems peacefully, not by killing each other.
Can I also add something? I mean, during the war, I remember some Azeris were writing like, I have never seen any adequate Armenian person, and Armenians were writing the same. I have never seen any adequate Azeri. But if you looked at their own profiles, you could see that their whole job was just tweeting something hateful about the other side. I mean, they were themselves were not the adequate most of the time, and they were demanding, some kind of adequacy from the other side. I mean, I think the biggest problem here is that people are expecting some kind of reciprocation. They think that if the other side is not adequate, I cannot be adequate either. But actually, being adequate is good in itself. I mean, you become adequate because it's the right thing to do. You don't become an adequate person just because you're expecting the other side to do the same. So yeah, I think this is the most important aspect.
Totally agree. Sometimes I can add something. The attitude is this. They justify their very, let's say, nationalistic ideas based on, oh, look, Azeris hate us, so we have to hate them too. That's the logic which they present, and they think that hating Azeris is bad, and teaching our kids, Armenians, I mean, hate Azeris and Turks, it's good because it will save the country. But I'm sure that this is wrong. The hatred will just kill yourself inside. That's not the way to go.
Thanks so much, guys.
Great. So let us move on to the next question. And this might sound a bit repetitive, but I think there could be something we could all add. So, and Ümid, first we'll go to you. Can we agree to disagree respectfully regarding matters related to Armenians and Azerbaijanis? And I'll just add an extension there. Or are there topics for which this is impossible to do?
To be honest, I think right now we are in the situation that for Azeris and Armenians, most of the time to agree to disagree respectfully is actually almost impossible, and sometimes very difficult, because I mean, as I said before, we started to know each other, just most of us, for I think almost 2 months ago or 3 months ago. So we first of all have to start talking about non-controversial topics, so that, as I said before, we have to understand that we are real human beings. We have feelings. We go to the bathroom and so on. I mean, we have to understand these basic things about us, each other, and only after that can we come to the point in which we also can, talk about some topics that are controversial. So I think that it's not a good idea to directly start with the controversial topics. First, we have to start about, just daily things. I mean, which football team, for example, you support? I mean, what's the situation in Armenia about this? And what are the funny things, interesting things about Armenia or Azerbaijan? So let's say this kind of things must be discussed first of all, and after that, I think it's a good idea to talk about things that we don't agree. I mean, people don't know each other very well and start directly talking about something very sensitive, let's say fragile topics, let's say delicate issues. But instead of this, I think we first of all have to know each other, and only after that can we come to the point where we can have respectful dialogues.
Thank you. What about you, Hrayr? Do you think Armenians and Azerbaijanis can agree to disagree respectfully, or are there topics for which this is impossible?
It's difficult questions. I can say only for me, I can agree to disagree respectfully, but I'm not sure about others. I'm not sure about let's say nationalistic political parties in Armenia. So it's a difficult question. Before 1988, many Armenians and Azeris lived together in the same region. I was born, I wasn't born in Yerevan. I was born in a village close to the second biggest city in Armenia. And a majority of the population in that region were Azeris. And my father can speak Azerbaijanis, can understand perfectly. They went, I'm not sure they went in the same school or different school, but still they played with each other. What I mean is that just interaction is necessary, but that's not enough for agreeing to disagree respectfully, I think. Because there were this interaction in 1988, in 1989, but that didn't help. The war broke up. People couldn't manage their stuff with just talks. So yeah, that's the difficult question. That's it.
Okay, so I mean, any topic you think you can agree to disagree respectfully, almost?
Yeah,
if it's not too extreme. Okay.
Yeah, I can say about myself. I think some people, of course, they may not agree to disagree respectfully.
Okay, thank you. Anything, Umid, you want to add, or?
No, nothing. I think I already said everything, and also I agree with Hrayr that it's really a difficult question, and it's beyond the scope of this this meeting. So it's something that needs very good study, I guess.
Great, thank you.
Till now, we mostly agree. I mean, almost always agree with what we both said. So I think that's already a good sign.
Great. Aidan, you can take over.
Yes, I think it's been an interesting discussion, but unfortunately, this might be our last question from the moderators. And the question is, so each one of you have had some experience engaging or expressing some kind of empathy for the other side. What kind of reactions did you get from your own side on this? Did you get like positive reinforcement, or did you get some kind of backlash? Could you share a little bit on that?
Okay, can I start? Okay. I can say that actually I didn't get too many reactions. First of all, I don't have so many followers in my current profile, so probably that's why I didn't get so many reactions. And also the people I follow on Twitter are usually the people from Azerbaijani side, of course, that I agree with on this kind of issues. So that's why I didn't get so many reactions, but sometimes I got some negative reactions, such as I said before, what about this, let's say, complaints, such as when, for example, when I shared something about, atrocities committed by Azerbaijani side, they were saying, what about their atrocities? Why aren't you sharing about that? Actually, I was also sharing about those things. I mean, these people were just trying to, discredit me by showing that, okay, this guy is only talking about our wrongdoings. But it wasn't something serious. They were just, some kind of people that only came to Twitter to argue with other people. Only one real person that I know, real friend, let's say, had some kind of negative reaction about such things. I remember when Stepanakert was being shelled, some people were saying like, well, why aren't they just leaving the city? I quoted this and I said, it's their already home. Where should they leave? I mean, it's just nonsense. And one of my friends unfollowed me because of this. And apart from that, almost nothing else.
Go ahead, Hrayr.
Yeah, well, I'm not active in Twitter at all. And in general, I think Twitter is not active in Armenia, but Facebook is very active in Armenia. And yeah, I got some backlash and also slurs and insults, but I also replied them. I blocked many people. I unfriend some people. But if I'm honest, it's even wasn't what I expressed in Facebook wasn't that much like empathy towards Azeris, but it was mostly like, okay, guys, these 7 regions should really be returned to Azerbaijan. Yeah, that's what we should have done. That's what the right thing to do, and we should have go to compromises and try to end the war. This kind of stuff, what I was saying. And then some backlash was there. But also, which is good and sometimes also surprising, I got very good reactions. Especially because now I'm like firmly stand on the moral ground, which is not nationalistic. And I can myself blame nationalistic people that you did the disaster and you brought the disaster to the nation. And my arguments are very strong. I mean, at least I think that I have very strong moral ground, and some people also support. When I see some insult or slurs, that doesn't affect me a lot. I reply them, sometimes adequately. I hope I reply them adequately. Sometimes I block them, sometimes they block me. So this is the kind of thing which goes, but I'm used to it. And it's concerned not only this topic, I mean Armenian Azerbaijan relationships, but also like domestic political stuff. So yeah, that's my experience.
Great.
Thank you so much, guys. Yeah, go ahead, Diego.
Thank you, guys. So we're now done with the interview part, so to say, of the meeting. What we're going to do now is if somebody from the audience would like to ask a question or make a comment, they can send me a message through the chat, and I will and tell me if they want to do it on camera and mic. Also, since we're already towards the end, I invite you to activate your camera so we can see who's here, you know, like to at least know our faces if you want. We have a question by William, but I think, William, this was the question that was just answered. So I don't know if you still want to ask or say something, just write to the chat again, and I'll activate your camera so I can see you here on top. And then we have a question by Mary. Mary, do you want to ask? You were here just now, and now I missed you. And if not, just if somebody wants to say something, they can. I think there's the option to raise your hand. Okay, it was covered. Great. Nasrin, are you raising your hand to talk, to say something? I will activate your audio. Just a second. There you go.
Can I go ahead?
Sure.
Okay. First of all, thank you all for organizing this. I think this is a great initiative. I think it has great potential, and it was really wonderful hearing from both sides, and I look forward to more of these. I did have a question. You talked about, you know, condemning whataboutism, and I agree with you. I also disagree with whataboutism. It's important to acknowledge suffering of both sides, but not to turn it into a competition or a challenge. My problem is the utilization, or the problem that I witness is the utilization or presentation of one side's suffering in order to demonize the other side. And especially, I live in America, and I see, I'm sure that, you know, a lot of Armenians witness this from their side, but for me, I see a lot of anti-Azerbaijani and anti-Turkish sentiment from not just, you know, Armenians, but also people who are not at all affiliated with the South Caucasus, but they have been targets of, you know, social media influence about this war from diasporic accounts or people. And the suffering of one side is used to demonize the other side without mentioning the mutual suffering. So how can we combat this? How can we condemn this utilization of the suffering of one side without negating their suffering and experiences or asserting whataboutism? Because this type of one-sided presentation does have real consequences. And I mean, it's been presented even to me personally in my interactions. So what are your thoughts on that?
Thank you, Nasrin. I don't know who would like to answer this question or have some comment. And by the way, I just want to make a disclaimer that I think we didn't make in the beginning. It's about the names of whatever places we talk about. Like, we're not going to get into discussion if somebody says Stepanakert or Khachendi, or you know, Nagorno-Karabakh or Artsakh, we're not gonna discuss about the names. Everyone's free to use whatever name they want, and we will not, yeah, someone correct someone from what name they use. That's, like, we're not gonna go into those discussions. So yeah, sorry about that, but who would like to answer this question?
I can just say that it's a really difficult question for me. If I say I have an answer how we can stop this whataboutism and make the feel the pain of the other side, I think I don't have a question. I think probably the literature and art may help here. I have heard that some like writers wrote some stuff in Azerbaijan concerning like friendship of Armenians and Azeris. There is also one painter who painted very nice photos about the war and how society force young people to die. I don't remember the name, but yeah, something. I don't know. I can't remember the name of that painter. He's Azeri. I think probably more interactions, and if the borders will open, if borders are open, and then we will start more interact. Probably some new views in literature and art will appear. I don't know. That's the only idea which comes to my mind now. So I think, yeah.
I think the best solution here is, for example, let's say somebody is talking about the atrocities committed by Azerbaijanis and condemning those things. I think the best reaction to this is to really listen to that person and try to understand this person's trauma. Maybe you will learn something about this person's trauma, and instead of kind of responding to this person, you just say that I know I condemn this atrocities, and without any response to this person, you can share also your own let's say trauma, your own side's trauma. And let's say, for example, an Armenian is sharing something about Sumgayit, for example, and you can share something about Khojalı, and without let's say writing some response to this person, you can show that for example, I really understand you, I feel your pain. And maybe after this realization, the other person will also see that you have good intentions, you try to understand this person. Maybe that person will also understand your pain, and that's how I think we can break this cycle. This is a vicious cycle. I mean, one person condemns the other side's atrocity, the other side starts to respond by playing the card that we also had this trauma. And so this is not, I think, the good way to handle this. I think actually for example, I do this. I follow many Armenians, and most of them actually don't share anything about the Azerbaijani side's for example traumas, but I listen to them, I try to empathize with them, and on my own profile I share about both of these atrocities, and I hope that maybe one day they will start to see that I have some good intentions, and they will try to understand me too. As I said before, I don't expect any reciprocation. If I am understanding, then they also have to understand me. I do it for its own sake. I do it because it's something important to do. So I think this is the solution.
Great. Thank you, guys. The next question I will take is, do you want to ask it yourself? Thank you, Nasrin, a lot for your question, by the way. If you want to ask it yourself, there we go. So I will activate your audio now so you can ask this question.
Hi guys, sorry, I have a crying baby. Okay. My question. Hi Dinan. Hi Dinan. Hi Dinan. Okay. My question, first of all, Ümid and Hrayr, thank you. This was beautiful. It gave me a lot of hope. My question to you, in imaginary world, if you were tasked with solving the conflict, what would be the first reform you would do in your home country, not in the other country? Like, Ümid, what would you do in Azerbaijan, and Hrayr, what would you do in Armenia? If you had the power to do anything, what would be the first thing?
I don't know. It's a bit tough question, to be honest. I think this peacemaking is a very difficult job. So, but what I can say is that I think I would change the general rhetoric of the state, and I think this is what I would do. So I think right now we have to, we are so much keen on this historical topics and so on, but I think this is unproductive. So I would change this.
Yeah. I would change the Armenian history textbooks in schools and universities, because there is a lot of cherry picking in these school books, I think, and yeah, it really makes you very nationalistically oriented guy. So that's the first thing which I would do. I would change the history books.
Me too, actually.
Thank you. I have a message, a question, or a comment from B, but I don't know what's your name, B. But you said you will be able to share it yourself. So if you want to activate your camera, and I can give you the microphone to share it. And also anybody else who wants to, please put at least your first name or nickname or something, so it's more recognizable. So B, if not, we'll go to next. We also have a question from Ilkin. Ilkin, would you like to activate your camera and ask it yourself? No, okay. Well,
Ilkin Hasan, please. Is he my classmate, Ilkin Hasan? What's?
It's Ilkin Hussein here. So the question is, I will read it for you then, Ilkin. Ümid and Hrayr, do you think it is possible for Azerbaijanis and Armenians to live separately as they do now without fighting? Why to insist that Azerbaijanis of Khakhendi or Khojali should return to Nagorno-Karabakh, while Armenians of Hadrut area return to Hadrut? Is peace possible under circumstances?
Can you repeat it? Diego, can you repeat it? So I didn't get the beginning.
Do you think it is possible for Azerbaijanis and Armenians to live separately as they do right now, like the new status quo, without fighting? Like without insisting that any more Azerbaijanis return to what's left of Nagorno-Karabakh in Stepanakert and those areas, and without the Armenians returning to Hadrut and those areas? Do you think it is still possible to have peace without interaction?
Yeah, I think this is less probable. I think there is a sign that this conflict will be handled in some way. There is different ways that the sides can go, but I don't see the big possibility that this new status quo will remain. At least after 5 years, Azerbaijan can say, we don't want Russian peacekeepers here anymore. and Russia in that case has to go. So it will be already fully other status quo. From the other side, we see Western countries insisting on returning to negotiations in the framework of Minsk group. And also Russian side said that, yeah, the issue of status quo is not resolved yet, so we're gonna negotiate. So I think some processes also will happen there, and this status quo, which is right now, will be changed. But I don't exclude that this new status quo can remain like for 10 years or 15 years or maybe even 20 years. But I don't see that it can remain forever.
Yeah, the same. I think that this status quo will change, and only after that maybe there will be some developments on the process of peacemaking. I think.
Thank you, guys. And maybe one of the last questions from sorry, I cannot find your whole name. You had your camera just a second ago, but now I cannot find you. From Hratia Glulsadian. I don't know if you're still there.
He's there. His camera is there.
Oh, there you are. I'll activate your audio.
Hi guys, thank you for the discussion. Very positive and some good thoughts there. I have a question. How your families are reacting at your things that are you saying online or offline? Maybe are they pointing at you, or are their friends pointing at you and saying some slurs and saying like you are a disgrace? What is your experience?
In my case, my family doesn't say that type of stuff, and my close friend doesn't say. If they say, they are not my close friends anymore. But I have a big friend list in Facebook, and sometimes some people appear who are in my friend list, and they say the slurs or this type, or try to insult me. Then yeah, I already told I just block them, or I reply them the same way, or I reply them more. I don't know. I mean, I handle this issue, so I don't have problem with that. I don't have problem with my close friend circles and with my family for expressing my not nationalistic views. Let's say like this, yeah.
And can
The same here.
Sorry, can I have a question? Do you think that blocking these people is the answer? How to solve something?
I mean, I don't have a aim to change them, and I have many people who agree with me. So if my aim were like, I want to change, I'm a politician, I want to convey my ideas and convince them to accept it, that case blocking would not help, of course. But because I'm a private citizen, I just express what I think, and I'm sure that I stand on a high moral ground what I'm saying. That's why I don't have I don't feel uncomfortable blocking people.
You want to answer, Ümid, to this question? Or?
Yeah, I was going to say that almost the same situation I have with Hrayr. I mean, my family are not so much nationalistic. As I said before, previous generations are actually much more open-minded, I think, than our generation, because they have had an interaction with the other side. I mean, and I think that they also understand that it's impossible to break this vicious cycle unless we finally start, talking to the other side. I mean, how much more bloodshed should we see? I mean, this has to stop somewhere. I mean, this is endless otherwise. So that's why they understand it, and they are not so much, you know, hateful or anything like that. And I have never had such problems. Also, the same goes for my closest friends, especially.
Thank you a lot, guys. Thank you, Hracha, for your question. So now we're gonna go with Paul. Paul, I'm gonna activate your audio now.
Hello, everyone. I had just some thoughts from earlier about the whataboutism and how to talk about atrocities without it getting caught up, because we definitely see that on Twitter. One of the problems of Twitter is that people don't always know each other, and they can easily just drop by and out of context just see one of your posts and then go on about it. So I've definitely seen, if I try not to post about every single atrocity that comes out, because obviously there's a lot of them. But sometimes you can't be quiet at the same time. Sometimes you have to, especially I feel Armenians were kind of shell-shocked by the number that were coming out. And I'm not saying that there weren't ones by Armenians against Azerbaijanis, and maybe just they weren't photographed in the ways that the ones from Azerbaijan was, but the sheer number of them really made it hard to stay quiet all the time. But anyway, I do sometimes have posted about the other side atrocities, but people don't see that. They see me post one time about something that is an atrocity by Azerbaijanis against Armenians, and then becomes the what about starts again and again and again. And we just keep going in circles. And it's very hard to get out of that cycle, because there's always new people that are going to find you. And there's always new people that are going to drop in and make you sound like you're a hypocrite. Somebody mentioned about blocking. I try not to block as much as possible, but I've certainly gotten blocked by a lot of people. And at the same time, so I had somebody a couple of days ago, I was posting about Hrant Dink, and there was a random person who was just posting to everything I said about, here is the population of Azerbaijanis in Yerevan province in 1850. I'm like, I'm talking about Hrant Dink. This is completely unrelated, but they were just trying to get in their little bits of propaganda. So anyway, I'm just trying to say that it's a very hard thing to do, and we're never going to fix it. I've had people say, as Armenian, it's your job to condemn every Armenian that says a bad thing. And I said, in some degree, yes, of course we have to speak up, but people will point to a certain thing and say, you didn't criticize that. Again, we can't criticize every little thing that ever happens on Twitter. So it's a great platform that we can get to know each other, because people were saying at the beginning, not understanding Azerbaijanis. I did something like this with Armenians and Turks back in 15 years ago now, in the lead up to Hrant Dink being assassinated, actually, before that even happened. And I started to understand Turks for the first time. And I think in a way, the war really helped me to understand Azerbaijanis too, because before that, the only Azerbaijanis I ever was exposed to were like strong propaganda ones, to the point where I found them so irrational. And I said, Turks are much easier for me to understand than these Azerbaijanis. But now this is allowing me to see people from the Azerbaijani side who are very, very rational as well, like Ümid, and he has, I'm very, very impressed by his ways of going through things. So anyway, I know we're getting near the end, but those are just some of my thoughts about how we kind of tie this all together. And we can't always act based on what people are throwing at us, because we're never going to do that. I think the only way forward is just getting to know individual people for who they are, and just not put your whole government's idea onto them. Because people say to me, why did you do this war crime? Why did you? I said, no, I didn't do it. I don't even know the person who did it. I'm not defending them. They don't speak for me. And in the same way, someone who does an Azerbaijani war crime, it doesn't speak for them. We just have to know each other for who we are, and just see what that leads to. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And now we have, we're gonna do, I think, 2 more questions, and then we're gonna close. We're gonna go from Brandon Balayan. If you can, I'll activate there you are.
Hi, hello. My name is Brandon. I'm from Los Angeles. I just had a question. So I'm reading Black Garden by Thomas DeWall, and a part of the book, it's towards the beginning, he talks about the narcissism of minor differences, and basically touching upon how two groups who are extremely similar phenotypically, culturally, they tend to pick out the very minor differences in one another in order to, and these differences are kind of, it says the larger it was bound to illumine their imagination in terms of these differences. And I think a part of this has to do with the nationalism, like Hadad was talking about. So how do we combat these nationalists when they are trying to point out these minor differences in one another, be it religion, minor aspects in culture, when phenotypically, culturally, we're more or less very similar.
Yeah, I usually point out the similarities. I say, yeah, there is also differences, but similarities are much more. And I also point out that, for example, in culturally, we are more closer to each other than like Armenians and Western countries, for example, or I mean the Armenians who are living in Armenia. Or Armenians and Russians, because the Armenians who were born in Armenia and lived there, they really interacted with each other during the Soviet time, and it was the same country, same ideology. I even noticed that in the sense of how much we are religion, Armenians and Azerbaijanis, it's almost the same, which was very surprising for me. At the beginning, I thought that, yeah, they're gonna be very Islamistic and they gonna be like the religious people who pray every day or a few times a day. But when I saw them, most of them were in their everyday life quite secular. So yeah, that's the thing. I just point out the similarities.
It's the same. I mean, sometimes when people, for example, my relatives or people who are not my closest friends, then when they talk about Armenians in a very negative tone, I start talking about similarities that we have. Also, I share with some my positive experiences with some, let's say adequate Armenians, and I see that after this they start thinking, okay, maybe you're right. I mean, maybe we haven't seen, for example, Armenians. That's why we have this prejudice. At least they seem more, close to the idea that, yeah, maybe they are wrong after hearing such experiences or some kind of facts about our similarities. That's why I agree with Ryan on this.
Yeah, one more thing to add, I think it's specifically in Los Angeles, because it is, I mean, Glendale specifically is a very not homogenized, but it's a large Armenian population over there. And in Los Angeles, you don't come across a lot of Azerbaijani people. So in a sense, I think sometimes people in Los Angeles are much more nationalistic than even some people in Armenia and abroad, which is honestly surprising to me. But given what I'm dealing with in Los Angeles, I think I'll take what you guys' advice and at least try with family members and other friends and stuff like that.
You think most of the people in Glendale, they arrived there after the collapse of Soviet Union, or it's like the old diaspora of Armenia?
My family certainly did. My family came to Los Angeles, I think, in 1976. So it was much before they left the Lebanese Civil War, and then my mom's side left towards the beginning of the collapse of the Soviet Union. So it's a mix. It's a mix. I couldn't tell you, but I'm sure there's other diasporans from the early 20th century as well. I've been come across them.
Great, thank you, Brandon. Thank you, guys. And I think for the last question, since we're reaching the time, it's gonna be Marat. So hopefully also a future guest. So Marat, do you want to activate your camera so I can find you? There you are.
All right. Hi, guys. Nice to see everyone. My question is kind of for the two guests, but also Paul, if you want to chime in here, I'd love to get your thoughts. I wanted to know how important you guys think having more third-party and objective reporting and storytelling of the conflict would be. I know it seems like all we have is Dual, and he seems to anger people from both sides enough because, you know, they feel like he doesn't really represent their side to their liking. And so do you hope to see more commenting in this conflict from somebody that isn't directly tied to or commissioned or working on behalf of either side? Because one of my least favorite aspects of this conflict is whenever someone gives their opinion, and I mean, there's certainly a whole lot of bad actors, so, you know, I don't want to discredit that, but the anytime that somebody expresses an opinion, the very first sort of way to knock them down is to assume they're a shill or assume that they're you know, being paid really from the lobby of the other side. And so for me, one thing I really hope to see is how we are able to come to being within the same reality of understanding the facts. And usually that would be from something like a Black Garden or a Dual, even with the flaws that it comes with. So I just wanted to see your guys' take on that.
Who would like to answer? And if not, we also have Paul.
Let Hrayr begin.
No. I couldn't hear the question clearly. Something, the voice was a bit.
Like, do you think how important is to have third-party people commenting about the conflict rather than just Azerbaijanis and Armenians, like third-party people that are not tied to the conflict?
Yeah, it's a difficult question, but yeah, I think it's important because when you are inside that system and you look only through the lenses or through the ideologies with which you grow up, it's difficult to think outside the boxes. Yeah, it's good that sometimes there is the third part, and they say, yeah, they emphasize, they see both sides and they comment, and you can see through them, you can see yourself from the other point of view, let's say like this. Yeah, I think it's important. I think if many Westerners or Russians, I don't know, they write about this conflict, they give comments, they try to be balanced, that would help Armenians and Azeris to reach some common ground.
Ümid, want to say something?
Yeah, I also think that for finding a common ground, this kind of third-party sources are really important. But at the same time, I think that when people are biased from the beginning, they will not accept even those balanced accounts. I mean, they will say that, for example, I have seen these comments from both sides saying that, as Marat mentioned, for example, the wall is, you know, for example, being funded by Armenians or Azerbaijanis, and even this kind of accounts are being discredited if you are, you know, not willing to accept reality. So unfortunately, for some people, it's just a matter of proving their own, you know, narrative. So although it's very important, but I think it's not enough. I mean, unless we will see more people from each side who are trying to be more balanced, I think with just relying on third parties, we cannot reach any real results.
Yeah, agree.
Great. Thank you, guys. I always say it's the last question, but I'm going to read a comment of someone who cannot doesn't have a camera right now, and then the very last question for now. So this comment is from, I think the name was Bagir or Bangir. It says, first of all, I think we should acknowledge that it is basic human nature to have a sense of belonging to a group or national identity. As a result, it is hardly possible to have unbiased approach, and many times we end up having feelings or opinions opposite group will find offensive. It is vital to be open about inevitability of hurting each other. That means we should not try hardly to filter those opinions and be more honest about them. That is one of the important steps to take forward, in my opinion. So thank you for your opinion. Someone wants to say something? If not, I'll just go to the last question.
I tend to agree.
What?
I tend to agree with this opinion.
Yeah, my remark is there is many group identities, and it doesn't necessarily require you to consider your national identity is the biggest or the most important part of your identity.
Great, thank you guys. There's just a comment by Jovanes. I see that the short names, I don't know how to see the full names in the questions. Hofset, he says that Lawrence Broers, probably some of you know him, he's a British scholar, has a relatively new book, which they say it's very insightful. He hasn't read it yet, but I suppose he's recommending it to everyone to check it out.
I'm planning to read it.
Great. Yeah, he's great. I've seen him on many webinars. And then the last question by Arpine. What do Hrayr and Ümid think about the role of Russia and Turkey in this conflict? And what kind of effect do these countries, Russia and Turkey, have in building hate narratives between Azerbaijan and Armenia?
I think Russia has huge role. I think Turkey trying to show that it also has a big role, but that's not the case. And compared to Russia, Turkey has very small role. I think that this war, if I say this war was allowed by Russia, and the involvement of Turkey in this war was allowed by Russia because they wanted to change the status quo in this region, and Armenians were opposed to it, both the pre-revolutionary government and revolutionary government. So I think, yeah, that's Russia has a huge role. Russia had also a role in forming the anti-Turkish narrative in Armenia, started from, let's say, 1960s, because when Turkey was part of the NATO, from, if I'm not mistaken, from 1950s, somewhere like that. After that, anti-Turkish narrative were allowed in Soviet Union, and many nationalistic attitudes and trends in Armenia, which are we witnessing now, they are based on this stuff which happened in 1960s and 70s in, let's say, elite circles of Soviet Armenia. So yeah, Russia has a huge role in both forming the narratives in our countries, in hate speech probably also, but I would not say that everything Russia decides. I think both Armenia and Azerbaijan has enough independence to change the trends which we have been witnessing till now, and to change the narrative. I think we have enough independence, although Russia has a huge influence.
Yeah, I almost agree with everything he said.
Great. So yeah, that was the last question. Now we go to closing words. If you guys would like to say some last words, also our moderators or the host, and also I've opened the chat in case anybody wants to write something, you can now write freely. And also if you want to say like something, you can also activate your camera and like just a comment to say goodbye. So who would like to say some last words? Aidan? Okay, great.
Yes, I would like to say something. First of all, thanks so much, Ümid and Hrayr, for coming in and everyone coming in to listen. I think it was a great beginning as an introduction to dialogue, how we set it out to be. And I think we can use this as an example of our ability to conduct dialogue in a constructive way. So that's my reflection from my side. I'm quite happy with this first meeting. Thanks, guys.
Arnold?
I also want to thank Hrayr and Ümid. It was very insightful. Thank you for being on. And I actually have to say that I'm surprised by the huge amount of support from both sides we have received and the large number of participants and people who are interested. So that has actually exceeded my expectations. So thank you to our audience and to everyone who tuned in for our first meeting.
Yeah, thank you for organizing this. I also think it went better than expected.
Yeah. I also want to thank you for inviting me to this project, and also for organizing this project. And I hope that it will be the starting point of something bigger. And I hope that we'll see some more initiatives like this in the future, which will have more audience. But for the start, it was actually much better than I expected.
Yeah, thank you both for joining our first meeting, and thank you, of course, to the co-hosts for daring to do this. We hope that this will, I mean, now we're only around 40 people, but online this will be available to a much wider audience. So I think we have set a good first example of how things can work. So I'm really grateful to all of you for having taken part, and also for the audience for your constructive answers and comments. I think it's been great. So thank everybody for joining, and we'll tell you when soon. And yeah, and if you want to take part if you want to be part as a guest or something, or you want to help us with the initiative, you can just message us on Twitter, or we also have an email account, brightgardenvoices@gmail.com, well, from which you should have gotten the invite, so you have the email address. So yeah, thank you all, everybody, and yeah, if nobody wants to say something else, well, we have everybody thanking in the chat, so you can check the chat. So yeah, thank you, everybody. Okay, take care, and see you next time. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.